Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, guys, I'm about to drop a bomb on you. The Straw Hat Pirates are destined to be maybe the greatest pirate crew in the history of the One Piece universe. Those are just facts. But this doesn't stop fans, Oda, and through him even characters within the story from questioning Luffy. Luffy may eventually be the king of the pirates, but to reach this point he must fundamentally change, become a slightly different person, and a much more effective leader. What exactly is leadership in One Piece? What does Luffy offer as a leader? Does he have failings? Will Luffy undergo a character arc to change? In what ways? In most every way? How do the Straw Hat crew work? What are the failings of other Straw Hat members? These are things that I want to understand in order to tackle the discussion. So when I originally plotted out this video and wrote the script for it, it became apparent to me that this video was going to be incredibly long, talking about understanding Luffy, other crew members, the crew itself. So I've decided to cut this video into consumable parts. This is effectively part 2. I don't think that part 1 is an absolute must watch for this, but of course it will add to the experience, so I'll leave a link in the description. But to sum up the premise of that video as succinctly as I can, essentially, the idea is that Luffy has an underappreciated form of intelligence, emotional intelligence, as many people in the comments said. Spiritual intelligence, as I call it. Ultimately, it is because of Luffy's talent in this area that he is going to become the king of the pirates. But this is the main ingredient that Luffy brings to the crew. But there's other ways in which he leads. While every fight starts because of compassionate reasons, and Luffy is motivated in that way, that alone isn't enough. So let's get into it. In the last video we argued that if Luffy is going to realistically be capable of saving the world, that he must be compelled by compassion within reason. Essentially, the philosophy that One Piece and other series operate by is that the person capable of changing the world is going to have equal measures of empathy and compassion and intelligence. While we've argued that Luffy is intrinsically motivated by compassion, and that will matter, what we haven't really argued is Luffy actually smart enough? Because that matters too. And I believe that Oda has considered this and has a very reasonable answer. Oda knows that Luffy is an idiot. I know that a lot of people took offense to that when I said it in the last video, that Luffy has some amount of intelligence, but when we're talking about planning, when we're talking about decision making, when we're talking about memory, when we're talking about logic, these are not strengths for Luffy. Oda knows this and gave Luffy an important modus operandi. Luffy most often listens to and trusts those who have more expertise than he does. Essentially, the way that the Straw Hat crew operates is that Luffy more often than not knows what it is that he does not know, and he trusts those that he knows. An example which I think demonstrates this very well is the death of the Going Merry and Luffy's fight with Usopp. And so it's no surprise that Usopp felt compassion for the Going Merry, the Merry who the crew considered to be a nakama. And it was in part for compassionate reasons that Usopp could not abandon her, and fought for her, even going against Luffy to do so. But why did he need to go against Luffy at all? I believe that there was 2 reasons. The first one is less important, but I just want to talk about it, and the second is the one that we're obviously going to focus on. The first reason relates to Luffy's talent, his ability to read the emotions of other people. Much is made of Luffy being deceived, and he can be deceived, he can be tricked, that's his weakness. But in general, Luffy has a good sense when somebody is telling him the truth. He has the intuitive ability to read people's hearts, his emotional or spiritual IQ. As Rayleigh told us near the end of Whole Cake Island, within the confines of the color of observation hockey, you seem especially attuned to the emotions of living things. It's probably unconscious though, but having that ability means that you can sense the actions another person will take. A lot of Luffy's interactions in the story are justified based on this ability. This detail was confirmed near the end of the Katakuri fight because this was the entire premise of Luffy's fight with Katakuri. From the very beginning, he understood Katakuri's intentions, his emotions. I think for Luffy, it doesn't actually matter exactly what is said to him. It's the emotion behind it. This is where Luffy discovers his truths. What you say has to match with how you feel when you say it. This is how Luffy understood from the very beginning of the fight that Katakuri had no real intention to kill Luffy. And so Luffy used this as an opportunity to train himself. This isn't just something that was thrown into the story recently. This is how Luffy has operated the entire story. At least I think at the very base level, Luffy understood that Usopp was serious. I think that it's both important and interesting to bring this up because there's been other situations in which there's the potential for conflict between Luffy and crew members. But the Usopp fight is very distinguished and unique in the story because Usopp meant what he said and at the time genuinely wanted to leave the crew. Very different from, say, Luffy's fight with Sanji in Whole Cake Island, where he maintained the entire time that Sanji was lying to him. Maybe Luffy didn't understand the exact reason. He wasn't inside of Usopp's mind, where Usopp felt as though he was a burden to the crew, that they were going to throw him aside like the Going Merry, and it's for that reason that he felt compelled to leave. But Luffy knew the fight was real, and he treated it that way. But I think that maybe even more important than this, the second reason why Luffy and Usopp even fought in the first place, is that Luffy listened to and trusted the shipwright Kaku's judgment of the ship's health. He even says as much to Usopp during the fight. You are not a shipwright. A shipwright, an expert, has told us that she cannot be saved. Even though it was compassionate to fight for the Merry, Luffy listened to reason from an expert source whose judgment that he believed. Luffy knows what he knows, and he puts his faith and his trust in those who know better than him. This is a central tenet in Luffy's leadership of the Straw Hat crew and a philosophy that he follows. He knows that there are many things that he does not know, many things that he cannot do. He relies upon his friends. Here's a quote. Of course, I don't know anything about swords. I can't navigate, I can't cook, I can't even lie. I know I need friends to help me if I want to get ahead in life. Oda's very conscientious of this fact. Where Luffy fails, his crew and the people that he meets and trusts pick up the slack. In this way, Luffy doesn't have to be the smartest in order to become the best. He's just got to accurately read, put his faith in, and trust the right people, which is actually an area in which he excels. Luffy literally cannot succeed without his crew, and this is a theme that Oda plays on in many arcs. At the same time, the crew literally cannot succeed without Luffy, because it is his version of leadership which unites them and carries them. Because unlike Luffy, they do not know who to trust. You know, this may be controversial. I don't think that it should be, but it may be. But I think that Oda has sort of highlighted this concept through Zoro. And even though it hasn't really gone anywhere in the story as of yet, I think that Oda has in mind a climactic moment for these various themes. Luffy cannot succeed without the crew, but the crew cannot succeed without Luffy. A lot of the story has been related to this, but I don't think that we've reached the conclusion. But anyway, what am I talking about? Well, throughout the story, where Luffy might trust people in situations in which others would be very skeptical, in which they probably wouldn't, Zoro has been Oda's go-to character to sort of hold suspicions. And this started very, very early in the story. In fact, around the time that Nami joined the crew. From the very outset, Zoro was skeptical of her. He didn't trust her. He felt as though she was hiding something, and he was right. A couple of arcs after Nami joined the crew, as you guys know, she left the crew in order to return back to Kokoyashi Village and return to the Arlong Pirates because that was her endgame all along. To steal from pirates, accumulate wealth, and then purchase the freedom of Kokoyashi Village. And she didn't want any help doing it, because she didn't want to be a burden to anybody. But of course Luffy and the crew didn't know that, and Zoro didn't know that. But what Zoro did know was that she was hiding something. And so when she left, he felt vindicated by it. This actually led to a really interesting scene within Arlong Park. There was a confrontation between Usopp and the Arlong Pirates and Nami, and in this, Nami faked Usopp's death. And this death of Usopp, put in quotations, ended up coming back to the Straw Hats. Zoro didn't believe that Nami actually had any real desire to harm the Straw Hats or that she would actually do it. But he never seemed completely sure. In a conversation after the fact with Sanji asked Zoro, could Nami have really killed Usopp? And Zoro says, I told her she wasn't really a witch woman. Maybe she decided to prove me wrong. I just think that it's interesting to compare Zoro's reaction to the accusations against Nami and Luffy's. When Luffy found out that Nami had killed Usopp, Luffy straight up said, "That is impossible. There is no way Nami would kill Usopp. She's our shipmate." And it's also interesting that even though Zoro didn't believe that Nami had killed Usopp, he was willing to attack her, possibly even hurt her, to discover the truth. This was actually the start of Sanji and Zoro's rivalry. The first time in the entire story that they truly were at each other's throats. Through all of this, I think that you really get the feeling, especially reading it after the fact, that Zoro played a kind of antagonistic role against Nami in this arc. All in Zoro's pursuit of knowing her intentions for sure. Figuring out what she was hiding and whether that posed a danger to everybody else. Because Zoro lacks what Luffy has, the inherent ability to sense the intentions, the emotions of other people. And much more so than Luffy, in fact much more so than any other member of the Straw Hat Pirates, Zoro does not easily trust. He's a man who figuratively and sometimes literally sleeps with one eye open. And Oda here in Arlong Park very purposefully made Zoro both right and wrong. He was right that Nami was hiding something, and wrong in the sense that he should have had more faith in her. And more faith in his captain having chosen her as a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Zoro essentially showcased a lack of compassion for Nami's circumstances. And this isn't the only time that he's done this. This pattern is repeated once again with Robin. Robin joins the crew after being their enemy in Alabasta, and Zoro takes a long time to openly trust her as a member of the crew despite Luffy's will. We go through Jaya and then we go through Skypiea, and by the end of it, it seems like Zoro has finally trusted her. Only for his initial suspicions to come right back around when Robin leaves the crew in Water 7. Robin was in fact hiding something, her past, and her fears. But at the same time, Oda allowed Zoro to grow, whereas he was more antagonistic after Nami left the crew. He was very much less antagonistic when Robin left the crew. And I think that it's a cause and effect situation. He had seen the circumstances earlier, and at this time had more faith in Luffy's judgment. At least when it comes to members of the crew itself. Zoro still does this in the story. We've actually seen it a couple times recently in Wano. Oda has not forgotten. Zoro was very skeptical of Kiku. He knew that Kiku was hiding something, and that proved to be true. Zoro didn't know what it was, but he knew that there was something. Again, recently in the battle, Luffy accepts Drake as an ally and Zoro says no. Even going so far as to cross blades with Drake in order to come to his own conclusion. You'll notice none of the other Straw Hats have or have ever done this. But this is the same thing that Zoro attempted to do against Nami in Arlong Park. It's very consistent. Oda's actually striking a very intriguing balance when it comes to Zoro. The vast majority of the time when Oda takes the time to let you know that Zoro is skeptical of somebody, the vast majority of the time his skepticism is proven to be false. The vast majority of the time, but not every time. In Whiskey Peak, Oda rewarded Zoro for this behavior, and in this arc he saved the Straw Hats from being captured by the bounty hunters. This is another event which I think is very interesting to look at in retrospect. Because on one hand, the people that betrayed Luffy included many people that later became allies, including Vivi. If Luffy's ability is to read someone's intentions, read their heart, and come to a good conclusion about their character, then in this situation Luffy was right about Vivi at least, and several of the other members of Baroque Works also by the end of Whiskey Peak ended up becoming allies as well. But even still, Luffy did not know what they were hiding and was tricked by them, allowing for Zoro to save him and the entire crew. So it's kinda like both Zoro and Luffy were right about Vivi, in productive ways. So I've already criticized Zoro's faith or trust in Luffy regarding Nami and Arlong Park. It's time to reverse that, because in Whiskey Peak, I know this is very early on in the establishment of the crew, but in Whiskey Peak, Luffy did not trust Zoro enough. Luffy woke up to Zoro having defeated all of Baroque Works that were so nice to him and tricked him, and then he fought Zoro. But most importantly, he refused to listen to Zoro's reasons. In this case, one of the unique cases in which Luffy did not listen to somebody who had more expertise than he did. Also interesting to look back at this in retrospect regarding Luffy's inherent abilities to use haki, which Rayleigh explains haki is effective when you have a calm mind, and Luffy woke up very angry. One of those things that I think was probably intentional on Oda's part and major foreshadowing. But looking into it this way, I think you begin to have an understanding of why this fight happened. Luffy, who has the ability to ascertain people's intentions, their emotions, had clouded judgment at the time because of his anger, creating a situation that would not normally happen, and has not happened since. A lot of people make a big deal about Zoro's ability to sense that people are deceiving him, and the more that I think about this, the more that I believe that I disagree with this. I don't think that Zoro has any unique power whatsoever, because he doesn't consistently detect lies, and he doesn't consistently detect enemies. We'll look at Water 7 as an example. CP9 was posing as members of Galley Law and had ill intent towards the Stride crew. There is not a single time that Oda lets us know that Zoro is skeptical of them, because he, just the same as Luffy, was fooled by them. If you say that Luffy's great weakness is being tricked, essentially he can read people when they're being honest, but when they're purposefully being deceitful, that is his weakness, then to some extent the same thing exists for Zoro. If you need another example to prove this, Zoro was also tricked by Conus and Skypiea just the same as every other member of the Strides, including Luffy. The way that I make sense of this in context with everything else that we know is that it's not because Zoro can sense that people are hiding something from him. Zoro is simply far more logical than Luffy is. He is distrustful of people that the general person, your everyday reader would also be mistrustful of. It made sense to be skeptical of Nami. It definitely made sense to be skeptical of Robin, who had been their enemy before she joined the crew. It made sense to be skeptical of Vivi, as was also an enemy before they allowed her to tag along with them and she led them to Whiskey Peak. And you can continue forward like this. It always makes sense to be skeptical of Caribou. It makes sense to be skeptical of Drake, who again was just your enemy. Zoro is generally skeptical of everybody, including people that he does not know well or have recently acquired allies, who he knows for sure are not revealing the full truth, because it's essentially implied in some way. That includes Kiku. The whole deal with Kiku is that Kiku claimed to be this woman who didn't know how to fight, who was insecure, and at the same time demonstrated when they rescued Otama that she was a very capable samurai. Right then, Zoro knew that something didn't add up. And this wasn't crazy intuition, this was simply putting the puzzle pieces together logically. You know, honestly, we have a great hypothetical to go off of, because Zoro was not in Whole Cake Island. You have Pudding. Pudding is such an interesting example because she very clearly tricked Luffy and everybody else, and that's not something that Zoro would have picked up on. But Zoro is naturally distrustful in a logical way. Do you think Zoro would have trusted a child of Big Mom, at least to the level of everybody else? Absolutely not. Again, the idea that Zoro sleeps with one eye open. He remains cognizant of the possibility that this child of Big Mom is actually loyal to Big Mom. That seems reasonable to me. And this hypothetical may even be less hypothetical than I suggested it is, because just because Zoro wasn't there doesn't mean a character didn't play his role. Pedro acted the same as Zoro would have. And what exactly was accomplished from Pedro's skepticism? Nothing. Literally nothing was accomplished other than foreshadowing for the reader, which again is how it tends to be for Zoro. At the end of the day, just as many other examples, Luffy's gut was right. Pudding was somebody worthy of trust, and at the end, she helped them. And this brings us back to compassion. Why did Pudding switch sides? Well, more than anybody, it was Sanji's kindness. Even with the gun to his head, he never turned on Pudding, and so she never pulled the trigger. So it was true that trusting those that it was illogical to trust proved valuable. I don't think Zoro would ever. Certainly not in a straight-up situation like Sanji faced. But I'm sure a lot of you out there are getting a bit antsy. There's been a lot of information dropped here, but what is the conclusion? Like, how do we use this information and then make a prediction? Is Luffy too trusting? Should he defer to Zoro? Is Zoro too mistrustful and should he defer to Luffy? Is there some balance between these two things? When you lay out all the evidence, for me it seems very, very clear that the vast majority of the time, 99% of the time, and Oda makes this very clear in the story, Zoro should trust Luffy's judgment. There is almost never a reward for Zoro being skeptical and mistrustful of other people. Oda goes out of his way to make Zoro mistrustful of characters almost every single time who end up becoming allies. Almost every single time. When it actually comes to the villains that you would like for somebody to have spotted beforehand, Zoro doesn't notice either. Zoro didn't predict Chondro any more than anybody else, despite being the guy who's supposed to be on guard and perceptive of these things. What are you gonna do, assume everybody is going to be your enemy? And if you do that, haven't you lost more than you've gained? The only times that Zoro ends up being right, it basically is pointless. Maybe even sometimes counterproductive. To me, this feels like Oda's message, what he will eventually get to. We haven't gotten there yet, but we will eventually. As Luffy has learned to trust in those who know more than him, that have greater expertise than him, the same thing works in reverse. The crew needs to trust Luffy in what he is good at. And Luffy, the vast majority of the time, knows who to trust. And even when it is illogical, it ends up coming back around, and these moments of trust prove valuable. Because making decisions based upon compassionate reasons is always the right decision in One Piece. And Luffy is going to rise to the top of the pirate world because of his inherent ability to easily trust, on many occasions turning enemies into allies in the process. And this is maybe something that Zoro does not understand yet. Let's take it back to Arlong Park. Nami returns to the crew and she wants no part of them, even going so far as to disrespect them to their face, very similar to Sanji and Whole Cake Island. Zoro wanted to fight her, but was stopped by Sanji, because fighting Nami never served any purpose. Zoro's instincts here never served any purpose. Zoro wasn't going to beat the truth out of her, and if he had, maybe you lose a crewmate for real. Rather than force her to be honest, it was always the best move to wait for her to choose to be honest, and be there for her when she decides that. That was always the compassionate thing to do for her, knowing that she had a reason to betray them, knowing her heart as Luffy did. This is just another thing that seems to me to be rather consistent. When Sanji leaves the crew in Zou, who is the character, the Straw Hat, who is least compassionate for whatever reason he has to do this? It's Zoro. Who's the one who advises Luffy and the crew to forget about Sanji? It's Zoro. Here again, Zoro is wrong, but he does not seem to know that, and there is no moment of resolution in which it is explained to him. If you're interested in a really cool parallel, in Arlong Park, Sanji stopped Zoro from fighting Nami. And in Whole Cake Island, very similar circumstances, Luffy refused to fight Sanji. I guarantee you Oda was intentional here. It never served any purpose fighting Sanji. Luffy knows that he cannot succeed without all of the members of his crew, and that includes Sanji. Whatever is gained by not going to Whole Cake Island is lost because Sanji is not here. And even then, Luffy's got compelled him to figure out what was going on with Sanji, because to Luffy, the situation did not seem right. Luffy was acting based on compassion, a feeling that Sanji needed him. So he needed to be there for Sanji when he was ready to be honest, no matter the danger. Recently, in Wano, X-Drake decided that he wanted to join the Straw Hats, and Luffy almost immediately said sure. And Zoro said no, and Zoro proceeded to fight X-Drake in order to discover the truth. But I ask you guys, what purpose did this serve? What exactly did Zoro accomplish? Eventually, Zoro decided that, okay, I will trust X-Drake, but it doesn't change the fact that we, as the audience, know that X-Drake is a Marine and a member of SWORD, and he may in fact betray the Straw Hats in the future. Zoro has not stopped this potential event from occurring. His obsession with forcing the truth out of people, once again, proves pointless. So once again, we are maybe reminded that it was always the better option to trust him, earn his respect, and maybe also his friendship. In the end, it would have been better simply to listen to Luffy's judgments. and not attempt to act as the captain, the one who makes the decisions for the crew. Because the one most capable of leading the Straw Hat Pirates is and has always been Luffy. I still think that Zoro has something to learn, and maybe the fan base too. Luffy is an idiot, but he's smart where it counts, and when he fails, he knows to rely on other people. When Luffy isn't relying on someone else, this is because typically this is an area in which Luffy specializes. He knows what he does not know, but he also knows what it is that he knows. And it is this attribute which makes him a great leader. If the crew and Zoro trust him enough to actually lead. And I know that some people might say, well, there's a place in the crew for Zoro's skepticism, that it is important that somebody on the crew be a little bit mistrustful. Maybe we get a situation like Whiskey Peak again. A situation where it's very obvious that, from a logical standpoint, that you should mistrust a group of people. Luffy and Usopp and Nami, they can't do it, but Zoro can, and that's going to save them. That could still happen, but I don't think that it changes the truth. The Straw Hats have been carried 99.9% of the story by trusting. This was an arc that Zoro wasn't a part of. He didn't get to see, but in Marineford, there's a lot of this going on. Luffy trusted a lot of the prisoners in Impel Down, Crocodile and Buggy, people that logically you should not put any trust in whatsoever. He trusted them, and that paid off. Crocodile actually saved Luffy. At the very least, I think that the only way that Zoro's mentality works within the crew is if he never steps beyond Luffy's decisions. And the vast majority of the time he hasn't, even if he's wanted to. I think that we should keep in mind that Zoro will probably always be Zoro. I don't think that you're going to change who he is, and it's never been a problem that Zoro's been mistrustful of people that Luffy has trusted, and he sits there and he pouts about it, but he doesn't do anything about it. And that's the way that it should be. A lot of people wondered after the X-Drake scene with Zoro recently in Wano why some people, including myself, made such a big deal about it. It's because it breaks the pattern. Zoro actively confronted a person that Luffy had already decided to trust. In this case, Zoro determined that Luffy's judgment didn't matter. Zoro needed to come to his own conclusion. He was the one that would decide whether to trust X-Drake or not. This is the only way that their dynamics within the crew in the future may not work. A lot of people suggest that this is simply Zoro acting more like the vice captain, but that only works if it improves the crew's chance of actually being successful. Does Zoro confronting X-Drake after Luffy had accepted him into the alliance improve their chances of being successful? No. Instead, it's just not so borderline insubordination. The captain's decision regarding these sorts of things should be final, not dependent on Zoro's opinion. But you see Zoro pushing the boundaries. Very similar to what he almost did in Arlong Park. Again, guys, I just feel as though there is something that Zoro needs to learn. A moment that Oda has been working up towards for the entire story. The definitive moment, the reveal of why Luffy is the captain, and how his version of intelligence and leadership is what's going to lead him and the entire crew to achieving their dreams. But yeah, guys, this is a video that I just feel like I needed to make because there's pretty much any time that you speculate anything regarding Zoro, confrontation, or conflict with Luffy, I think that a lot of people take it personally. But I think that to do so is an almost disrespect to Zoro as a character. A character without flaws is not an interesting character. That's what I believe, and that's what Oda believes. After getting a question about Katakuri, who was once a perfect man and we learned later was very much not the case, Oda said, "You asked if it's policy, but perfect people are so boring. People love other people's flaws." Oda's words, not mine. This is in part why it blows my mind whenever people complain that their favorite character has some kind of flaw, because to have a flaw in One Piece means that you are being treated as relevant to the story. Oda's focusing on you. Honestly, I think that Water 7 made more Usopp fans than may have existed beforehand. I consider Water 7 and Enies Lobby to be huge Usopp shine, despite it focusing on his flaws. The same is true of Robin in Enies Lobby, the same is true of Nami in Arlong Park. Those arcs themselves gave you a greater understanding and appreciation for those characters, despite it all culminating and starting from a place of imperfection. Yet if you ask me, it seems as though the community is interested in holding up Zoro like the Big Mom family held up Katakuri. He's perfect, which essentially means that Oda cares less about him, because Oda enjoys writing about characters' flaws. He's already done so with a good majority of the Straw Hat Pirates, but not really with Zoro yet. I tend to think that Oda is saving him for last, along with Luffy and his propensity to be careless. When you stop growing, you stop being interesting. And it appears to me as though many people believe that Zoro is already the final form of himself, and that the only thing left that he needs to accomplish is become stronger. You're limiting his potential. I think that there is definitely enough here to speculate, and I haven't even speculated half of what it is that I actually think. We're still saving that for later. But today I really just wanted to focus on Luffy's leadership to tie this video together. But as always guys, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.